900 hours Central Africa time, Monday the 30th of October 2017, Jumbo Africa, and a very good morning. I'm Elvis Preslin. Now we will be with you until 12 o'clock today. Focus today is on the protests against farm murders that are due to be held in Cape Town and Pretoria today. It's nationwide, so to speak, Kendall. There's a lot happening with all the farmers feeling unsafe in the country.
Absolutely. We just had a quick sneak peek at some of the protests and a whole host of cars blocking some of the roads.
Yeah, that's why we're asking you this question. 71 farm killings in 2017. Will this protest against farm murders put the focus on that particular issue? That's what we're asking you. Let us know what's on your mind. Let's take a look at what you're telling us.
Right, Michael Bigamstoller says it will highlight the farm killings epidemic, but why do all these marches happen every time it has to do with white people's interests? I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
Kagiso says, I'll wear black for my fellow black farm workers who die as a result of them being mistaken for baboons or used for target shooting practice, says Kagiso. Now, those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll keep on reminding you about the question, but we're also focusing on the South Gauteng High Court that ruled that smacking your child is no longer on the cards. Kendall, to smack or not to smack? That's the question, but that's not the question we posed to you.
Well, yeah, that one's already passed and gone. So we want to find out from you, do you agree with the ruling that makes spanking your child illegal?
There's 159 votes in. I can tell you there's a lot of angry parents. 78% of you are saying, no, we don't agree with this ruling that you can't spank your child anymore.
Let's see what's being said on social media. Killjoy says, first, you need to feed, house, school, and take care of my child before you can tell me how to raise her.
Well, there you have it. This is well said. Michael Bigham says, no way in hell. We can't be told how to raise our kids by people who can't even run a country. Ooh. My house, my rules. Whoa, I tell you. Now that is being said, not in jest, but just for you to know that you have to feed my child before you can tell me what to do.
And of course, we had a very busy sporting weekend. Lots happening, Telkom Cup, Currie Cup, tennis, but we also had a new world champion in Lewis Hamilton. He won his 4th world title, something that was, it's not unprecedented, but incredibly difficult to do. Only 2 other people have ever won 4 world titles, and then 2 more than that. Lewis Hamilton has just won 4th world title. What are your views on that? If you're a Formula 1 follower, we've got a few tweets that we're hoping that we're going to be able to share with you a little later. Make sure you keep them coming.
The first Briton that can do that 4 times in a row to win that championship. So what do you make of that? And of course, on top of that, the first black Briton to do that, by the way.
First black man to do it.
Well, so there you have it. But now, let's get down to your news headlines. Enough is enough. Farmers across the country take to the streets today to demand urgent action against farm attacks. Kenya's Electoral Commission expected to announce the results of its presidential rerun vote today. And hundreds of thousands of people in Barcelona rally for Spanish unity in opposition to Catalonia's bid for independence. Those are all your headlines. Before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. It was a busy weekend, wasn't it?
Absolute crack of a weekend. It's great because in a couple of weeks' time it's going to go all quiet. So we enjoy it while we can. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today. Samuel Julius' strike helps Chippa United cause the biggest upset of the last 16 in the Telkom Cup as they, for the first time in any competition, defeat Mamelodi Sundowns by 1-0.
6-7 phases from Western Province.
Western Province comes from behind to score an emphatic 33-21 victory over the Sharks in Durban in the Currie Cup final.
And he's going for his 2nd of the afternoon.
Strikes this through the covers. He'll be able to turn for the 2nd. This will be the fastest 100 in world cricket.
David Miller's record-breaking 35 ball ton seals the deal as the Proteas sent Bangladesh home after inflicting a 7-0 tour whitewash. Max Verstappen wins the Mexico Grand Prix, but the day belongs to Lewis Hamilton, whose 9th place finish is good enough to seal an astounding 4th Formula One driver's title with 2 races to go.
It doesn't feel real, man. I mean, obviously, that's not the kind of race that I want.
We will, of course, be playing you that up sound by the new world champion in the Formula One circuit a little later when we do the sports bulletin. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Protests against farm murders are due to be held in Cape Town and Pretoria today. The city of Cape Town is appealing to motorists to be patient as roads in and around the city are expected to be congested due to the mass action. Civil rights group AfriForum says there have been 341 farm attacks, with 71 people murdered since the beginning of this year alone. Farmers and civil society groups are expected to gather at Klapmuts near Stellenbosch this morning. The march will begin at Kanonkop in Stellenbosch and proceed to the R102 from the R101 and link up to the Old Paul Road. It will move through Kraaifontein and Brackenfell up to Voortrekker Road and then to Belleville, Parow and then Goodwood, Kensington, as well as the Maitland area of Cape Town. It's reported that protests will also be held on highway access ramps around Pretoria. Now, it's a lot happening around the country. For the latest on the protests against farm killings, we are joined by our reporter Vanessa Puna, who's in Cape Town. A very good morning to you, Vanessa. Can you give us an update and paint us a picture of to what is happening where you are right now?
Elvis, yes, good morning to you. At the moment you're in Klapmuts. It's taken all of an hour to start seeing some movement as a few thousand, it seems, strong convoy of vehicles starts making its way from the R44 towards the R01. I'm just going to pan our camera, Elvis, just to show you behind me. This is but a fraction of the number of bakkies, vehicles, cars, as well as people from across farming communities across Cape Town and surrounds that have come out today to heed the call on this, what it's been dubbed the Black Monday. Most people wearing black T-shirts, most of them saying enough is enough. That, of course, the name of this campaign in light of the recent killing of Joubert Conradi from the 8 farm here at Klapmuts. People coming from as far afield as Swellendam and surrounds coming together. A very short prayer service earlier on attended by the family of the late farmer. The message coming out there as well is one of peace, one of love, one of forgiveness, coming together to ask that South Africa heals itself from the scourge of crime, particularly today the focus being the crime of farm killings as well as attacks on farmers and also farm workers we've spoken to early on. Elvis telling us that these farm attacks not only affects the farmers in question but also the entire farming community themselves, saying that their livelihoods are at stake, saying that food security is at stake. So this, of course, a mass gathering all the way along the route that you've just mentioned. We expect this convoy to reach the Greenpoint track roundabout in the next 2 hours or so. It's going at a very slow pace because I think that at this stage, just the sheer numbers, the volume of people that have come out today has actually surpassed originally what the organizers had thought or envisaged. Just there's been an outpouring of emotion early on. There's been an outpouring of support on bakkies behind me, messages saying stop farm killings, as well as big black crosses painted on some vehicles, black flags some people are hoisting out of their vehicles this morning, Elvis, as this convoy now finally gets underway. It started a while ago, but here where I am, just in front of the Kanonkop winery on the R44, it's been standing still, and that's of course just to allow the volumes of vehicles to go through. There are trucks, there are tractors. It was kick-started by a parade of horses and carriages, and of course they will then start the parade as this convoy makes its way all the way through to Cape Town this afternoon, where a prayer service will be held again before the crowd disperses. But this, of course, in light of the recent killing of Joubert Conradi, but also throwing the spotlight on farm killings across the country, of farm attacks across the country, and violence against the farming community in general. That's happening right here in Klapmuts as we speak.
Now, I'm sure that you've spoken to some of the participants there. What are they saying? What is the motivation really for them to be on this march? And what is the symbolism behind people wearing black today?
Yes, the symbolism behind people wearing black is because it sort of casts a shadow. These deaths, these murders cast a shadow. And they're saying that we need the light to shine through this dark cloud hanging over farmers and the farming community in South Africa. Those people that I have spoken to this morning saying, of course, that the reason they've decided to come out to support this call by genoeg is genoeg, or in English, enough is enough, because no longer can the farming community, no longer can any South African sit back and watch how these attacks happening, the violence taking place almost on a daily basis, crime spiraling, in some cases out of control. We all know that the crime stats have just been released with 19,000 murders reported in the last year. And people here at this protest action, people here at this convoy today saying that that's unacceptable, that South Africans must stand together, must clamp down on crime in all its forms, and of course today focusing specifically on crime in farming communities.
Now, in closing, Vanessa, will they be handing over a memorandum, and if so, who will receive it at the end of the day when they end up in Cape Town?
There hasn't been any talk at this stage of a memorandum being handed over, Elvis. I can tell you that a prayer service is expected to take place once this group of protesting farmers and farming community members get to Cape Town. I do know that there was a meeting yesterday with provincial government as well as members of AfriForum, etc., talking about this very same issue that, of course, happening in the wake of the murder and, of course, as a run-up to today's protest action. Also, provincial government, AfriForum saying that the problem is compounded with the drought that we've been experiencing here in the Western Cape. These kind of attacks on farmers, not only in our province but countrywide, has a devastating effect on food security. We depend on farmers for food. The farm workers depend on farmers for employment and that kind of thing. So obviously at this point, AfriForum very concerned. We do know that they are in support of this protest action. The provincial government saying that they too are extremely concerned about the spate of murders on farms, and so of course farm workers that I've spoken to earlier on this morning also saying that they too are concerned because they too live on farms. They too are on or in the firing line, so to speak, when criminals come onto farms with the intent to rob, plunder and kill.
Has traffic been badly affected from where you are?
I know that the City of Cape Town, Elvis, has sent out a warning to motorists across Cape Town, just in warning of possible congestion. Where I am at the moment on the R44, we've shown you the visuals earlier on. The R44 is completely congested. This road, all the way from my right-hand side, all the way to my left, in the direction of the N1. The convoy will not move onto the N1, but in that direction, of course, going into town. I still have some cars parked along the side of the grass verge here, but others going at a snail's pace. So traffic in this area, yes, congestion here, and also congestion expected as this motorcade, if I can call it that, makes its way into the centre of Cape Town.
Vanessa, thank you so much for that report. That's our reporter there, Vanessa Puna, in Cape Town. We'll bring you an update on that protest in Cape Town as well as here in Pretoria, also here in Vanderbijl Park, where farmers are marching. Now the ANC meanwhile has wished the IFP leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi a good retirement, saying that he has played his part in the liberation of South Africa. The Inkatha Freedom Party made the announcement of its leader's retirement at a press conference in Durban following an extended council meeting yesterday. 88-year-old Buthelezi has led the IFP since its inception in 1975. He will step down as the party's president after its National General Elective Conference in December. The IFP's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary, Valenkosini Slabisa, looks to be the favorite to take over the party reins. Meanwhile, the IFP Chief Whip in Parliament, Naren Singh, says that Mangosuthu Buthelezi will still guide the party as it moves ahead to elect a new and younger leader. He was speaking on Morning Live earlier.
His departure is going to have an impact on the party. But what we are pleased about is the fact that he has offered himself to guide us in the next few years, as long as his health allows him, and he's willing to do so. We're not going to put any pressure on him to do that, but it's always good to have a father figure around to guide you, to mentor you, to make sure you don't make mistakes and correct you where you're wrong. So to that extent, I think we're extremely pleased as members of the party that his presence will still be felt, although he will be taking it much easier than he has done for the last 50 or 60 years. The age of Mr. Hlabisa probably would have been already disclosed in the media, but he is 52, so he's got a long way to go in politics. Nkosi Mzamo Buthelezi is much younger than him, and he will also have an opportunity to grow. But I can see a number of younger leaders emerging within the ranks of the IFP. We've got young members of parliament, and watch this space. We'll have even younger members of parliament moving forward, because we believe that the young people of our country have not been as forthright coming out and voting in elections because they felt there was no need, leave it to everybody else. But the time demands that every single person in this country has to come to the polls and cast his or her vote.
The Democratic Alliance is calling for a probe into Gauteng Premier David Makura's role in the transfer of Esidimeni mental health patients, which led to 141 deaths. The party wants the Premier questioned after testimony at the Life Esidimeni arbitration hearings by the former Mental Health Review Board Director Dumazile Masondo appeared to contradict his earlier claims. Masondo alleges that Makura attended meetings on the moving of the patients. She also claimed that the former health MEC, Kodani Mashlangu, told her that she was getting orders from above on the Life Esidimeni project. The DA says that this contradicts Makura's claims that he did not know that the patients were being sent to non-governmental organizations instead of other state health facilities. Makura is due to testify at the hearings along with Mashlangu. The High Court in Cape Town will continue hearing an application this morning for an interdict against protesting students at the University of Cape Town. Now, there have been renewed protests on university campuses, with students demanding the urgent release of the much-awaited Higher Education Fees Commission report. President Jacob Zuma said at the weekend that it would be released this week. Meanwhile, Universities South Africa, which is an umbrella body for the country's universities, has expressed concern at the reported leaking of the report. It was reported at the weekend that the 748-page report concludes that South Africa cannot afford universal free higher education and proposes an overhaul of the funding system instead. Universities South Africa says they are concerned that this could inflame a highly tense political environment and expand the protests at universities and compromise end-of-year examinations. A little further afield now to the East Africa, where Kenya's Electoral Commission is expected to announce the result of its presidential rerun today. The results of Thursday's vote have been on hold while officials decide what to do about 25 constituencies where voting was blocked by supporters of the opposition leader Raila Odinga. The election is set to deliver President Uhuru Kenyatta a landslide win after Odinga pulled out. At least 49 people have died in election-related violence since the first presidential election in August, the result of which was later overturned. Now, this prompted Kenya's worst political crisis in a decade. Odinga has demanded a new election within 90 days, vowing to stage a campaign of civil disobedience. In Europe, hundreds of thousands of pro-unity protesters have taken to the streets of Barcelona to show their support for Spain's central government and their opposition to Catalonia's bid for independence. Meanwhile, the Spanish government has warned deposed Catalan President Charles Puigdemont that he could be jailed within the next 2 months over his part in the regional parliament's unilateral declaration of independence. The central government has assumed control of Catalonia after sacking the president. Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has called for regional elections in December. Now remember that we're posing a question of the day to you, and of course we're looking at the issues here at home, and we're asking you 71 farm killings in 2017 alone. And we're asking you if the protest that is currently taking place against farm murders put focus, if it will put focus on the issue. Let's take a look at what you are telling us. Barbara says, wearing white today in support of all the victims of crime in South Africa. May we be united to stand up against all crimes against our people. Dipansu says, why is this addressed in isolation? What about farm workers dying in the hands of the farmers? Crime and murder affects all people, and that's why we're asking the question, Dipansu, of all farm killings. It's not just the farm owners, but also the farm workers as well. We'd like to find out about what you think about that. Now, the picture of the day comes from New Balance Cricket. It's Miller time, it says there. Defy expectations. David Miller gets to a 100 of 35 balls. Now that is the quickest ever T20 century. What a knock. That was South Africa versus Bangladesh, hashtag there. And of course, 35 balls it took him to get to that 100. Squeeze those balls. That man really hit that ball. So, comment of the day comes from Craig Nutley. Says, hashtag fees must fall. Students were promised free education. Direct your anger at those who broke the promise. Smashing campus resolves absolutely nothing. And I can tell you that he's got a point. What do you think about that? Do you have to burn down your campus in order to make your point? No, you don't have to. But let's take a look at what's happening in court. In Cape Town, the High Court there will continue hearing an application for an interdict against protesting students at the University of Cape Town. Now, there have been renewed protests on the university campuses as students demand the urgent release of the much-awaited Higher Education Fees Commission report. Now, President Jacob Zuma said at the weekend that it would be released this week. The question is, why did the president take so long to have it and to make sure that the public gets it? Moving to Pretoria. The man who allegedly kicked the 3-year-old Poppy van der Merwe to death will today appear for the first time in the High Court together with Poppy's mother. The trial of the man accused of the death of top billing presenter Simba Mere is also expected to resume in the Randburg Magistrates Court in Johannesburg. And then the case of Preshalin Naidu has been postponed numerous times for various reasons. And in Limpopo, the trial of the ex-convict Mark Scott Crossley, remember him? He's expected to start in, the court is supposed to start in Lenyenye Magistrates Court outside Zanin. Scott Crossley is being tried for allegedly driving over farm workers. And then Silence Mabunda in December last year, and that's why he's in court. And then 30-year-old Sangoma is expected to appear in the Bizana Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape in connection with the murder of a 17-year-old grade 10 learner in Kwanikwe village. Now, these are some of your core stories. We'll keep you updated on the developments on these cases, and remember that we're going to focus on that a little bit later. But tomorrow, let's throw forward. We will focus on the controversial decision in KwaZulu-Natal to exclude certain race groups from BE deals. It's an in-depth discussion. You don't want to miss it. We'll take a short break. Now, after that, when we do come back, we'll take a look at education and how it affects education today. Mr. Steve Mabona, you in studio here with us. We'll be chatting to you in a short while. That is what you can expect after this break.
The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the sides is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
Now, there are major traffic delays in part of Gauteng as the farming communities, civil rights groups and many South Africans are heeding the call for mass protests against farm murders. Traffic is highly congested in many areas in Gauteng. Now, this comes at the back of the grade 12 learners writing the mathematics paper today. The Gauteng Department of Education has made a concession for learners who are stuck in traffic. They were supposed to start earlier this morning. Now, we are currently talking to Gauteng Education spokesperson, Mr. Steve Mabona, who joins us now in studio. Very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning.
Traffic congestion all over Gauteng. We also heard about the R24 coming from Vereniging, is the R59 rather coming from Vereniging also blocked off. How did that impact on schooling and, of course, the exams?
Look, yes, it affected the learners, but then safe to say our exam centers are already, actually they were ready because we had to, utilize back routes, make sure that the papers are there on time. As you'll understand that the exam is highly regulated. We have strict rules on what time to start and how to manage the examination. So we have learned that most of the learners were affected by the traffic, and what we did was that, because you'll understand that as per our rules, when you arrive late at an examination, you are still allowed to write. Then when you arrive an hour later, you are not allowed to write. So we have made some concession that all those learners that will arrive an hour late will be accommodated. So the chief invigilators will then have to, exercise a caution and take a discretion on how they accommodate them. Because remember, if you have already started, it means some learners will then finish. So those that have been given concession, they must also be part of the examination.
Yes, yes.
And
yes.
there are rules which are, are allowed to prevail in an exam room because of so many things. I mean, cheating, we avoid that. We need exam that is credible. So they will then have to take, those decisions. But we are saying those that are late, they can still go. If they are an hour late, they will be then allowed to write. But unfortunately, those that will not make it, they will then be afforded an opportunity to write next year, which is around Feb, March, during the supplementary period.
So how many students are affected? Do we have a number?
Look, we're still collating our statistics. But we're talking up, the areas around Tshwane in the north and, in the CBD, because, I mean, when you affect N4 going to town and, coming from north probably to Johannesburg, so all those areas, they are affected. And your Vereniging area, that is also affected. So we'll be collating our statistics just to make sure on how many of those learners could not make it. But then those that will be arriving late, the invigilators will then have to give us some reports on those that they've arrived late, because you need to record it as a rule, that is administering the examination.
In general, how are the matrics going so far? Are they happy with the papers thus far, and did you pick up any challenges and problems?
Definitely, we going very well in terms of the process. Process is smooth, though last week, the first 2 days, we were challenged by those that they were denied an opportunity to write because they are modularized. But then they were given multiple opportunities, because if they say we are modularized, you can only write probably 3 of your subjects that we have passed during pre-trial examination. The rest of their subjects will then be writing them next year in June. So that gives you an ample time to prepare, because you did not do well, during this period in the pre-trial examination. You are given an opportunity to can then do the 3 that you have failed, so that you pass and you are then certificated, next year around July. So some of them and their parents, they said, no, we want to write, because we've got all the subjects, in the timetable, the original timetable, besides the one that we've given them. So they were insisting that they want to write. And then we said, let's not disrupt the examinations. Let's give them an opportunity to write, and we'll see on administratively how we're going to manage that process. But besides that, the process is going very well.
For those that's not doing too well during this course of the exams, what sort of assistance will the department give them, the matriculants, that is, beginning of the year next year?
There is a supplementary, period, but then those that I've just spoken about, those that we have modularized, those are the struggling ones, the ones that we actually have moved from grade 11 to grade 12. To say one cannot be stuck in a schooling environment for so many years. Meanwhile, we see that this person is struggling. So let's make sure that one at least have a certificate, because with the certificate, you are given opportunities. I mean, a certificate can open so many doors. So we felt that let's give them multiple opportunities, and making sure that at least they write the 3 that they have passed during pre-trial examination, and the other 3 they can then write next year. So that's an opportunity that we've availed as a department.
Mr. Mabona, I thank you so much for your time, and good luck to the matriculants.
Thank you.
That is Steve Mabona, spokesperson for the Department of Education. Let's move along now. Today our focus is on the recent landmark ruling by the South Gauteng High Court regarding child spanking. Recently, the South Gauteng High Court ruled that South African parents who give their children a hiding will no longer be able to use the defense of reasonable chastisement if they are later accused of assault. Now, approximately 1 in every 4 children in South Africa have experienced some form of physical punishment through smacking or corporal punishment. The exact numbers of children who are victims of physical abuse in their own homes is unknown, as these incidents are not always reported to the police or social workers. Now, in 2008, Childline received 3,428 calls from children who said that they were physically abused. Elsewhere around the world, the majority of Europe member states have committed themselves to putting an end to all forms of corporal punishment administered on children. So the question is, what implications would this ruling have on South African parents who are, and we are right now joined from Durban by the practicing psychologist and lecturer, Dr. Linda Jairam, as well as the educational psychologist, Dr. Henry Marabatoho. I hope I pronounced that correct, but good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Elvis.
Now, you are both from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, first and foremostly, Doctor, what is your reaction to the recent court ruling on child spanking? And it's basically a question for both of you.
You go first, Henry.
I think, well, when I heard the news about the ruling, I felt it was a step in the right direction, in the sense that, I mean, if we abolish the corporal punishment in schools, it follows that that kind of behavior should not be allowed in their homes. So kids should not be subjected to corporal punishment at home if they are not subjected to corporal punishment at home, at school.
Now, Dr. Linda, your thoughts?
Okay, before I actually discuss the implications of that particular legislation, I think it's very important for us to understand that to spank or not to spank is nothing new. It is an age-old issue that is fraught with much controversy. And in order to understand this legislation and the implications it has for our parents, it's very important for us to understand and unpack or reconsider 3 important constructs. The first construct is that of the parent, the second one is that of the child, and the third one is that of discipline. Now, when looking at the construct of the parent Parenting is actually a privilege and a responsibility, where the parent shapes the child in the direction so that that child eventually becomes an effective, productive, and beneficial member of society. Now, why is this important? Why should a parent be responsible for shaping and molding our young children? Which brings me to the second construct, which is the child. Who is the child? What is the nature of the child? We need to understand that children, and we were once children as well, they come into the world with desires that are both selfish, harmful to themselves, harmful to others, as well as they can be quite unkind. So the parent has the responsibility and the privilege to shape that child in such a way that that child becomes a productive member of society. And that brings me to the third construct, which is discipline. Discipline is not equivalent to punishment. It's not equivalent to spanking. It's not equivalent to harming the child, damaging the child in any way possible. Discipline consists of a number of tools that one can use as a parent to steer that child in the right direction. And spanking is just one of those tools. And I think with the way our well-meaning authorities have moved, they have actually done this in a way to protect our young children based on the fact that we are living in an era where child abuse is so rife. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, because spanking does have its advantages when used with love, care, and compassion.
Now,
spanking to a preschooler can be very effective at that stage of development, but governed by compassion, care, and common sense. But as the child grows older, the parent needs to use more effective and more creative ways of disciplining the child. And by the time the child reaches the adolescent phase, the parent has to do away with corporal punishment completely.
Now, doctors...
So the issue for me is that, yes.
Yes. What is your issue with it?
The issue for me is this, that the recent legislation can be looked at very positively, where we now as parents come to see the role that we've been given as a full-time, involved, serious responsibility.
But
and
now, I want to look
that doesn't make harsh corporal punishment.
Dr. Linda, I want us to look at this particular ruling that was made in this case of YG, a religious man who assaulted his son and his wife after finding pornography on the iPad, his iPad. His reasonable chastisement defense was rejected. Now, clearly the boy was in contravention.
Yes, definitely. The boy was in contravention, but the parent ought to have used other creative ways of disciplining that particular learner. Because, like I said, discipline when used, spanking when used appropriately can have its effects, but it has to be used within certain parameters.
But the boy knew that this was against his family's belief system, as this act was not permissible in his father's religious house. So why can he not be punished as the father see fit at that point in time?
Like I pointed out earlier, parenting is an ongoing, involved responsibility and privilege. It's an ongoing responsibility and privilege. So it is not something that you will just suddenly take the whip or take the rod or take the whatever tool you're using to damage the child to such a degree that the child cannot see what the difference is between right and wrong.
Dr. Maribato, do you think that a child should be disciplined, or child discipline should be completely outlawed in South Africa? And should the country go ahead to put an end to all forms of corporal punishment on children in their own homes?
Yeah, no, thanks, Elvis. Just to add on what Dr. Jerome was saying, spanking increases immediate compliance, but there is no evidence that it changes long-term behavior. The example that you gave about a boy who was watching pornography, sometimes as parents we are reactive. Discipline should be something that is proactive. You don't wait until somebody does something wrong and to intervene. You understand what I'm saying? Had the parent spoken to the son about watching pornography on his, I think he would have come up with creative means of disciplining the child than resorting to violence. I think, somehow, because we were spanked as children, Elvis, that doesn't necessarily make it right. So what this legislation does is it protects kids from any form of psychological harm.
Dr. Chirai, what options are available to those parents? Or perhaps are parents being held hostage against acting against their children at this point in time?
I do not think that parents are actually being held hostage against their children at this point in time. I think for me, if we look at the legislation positively, it awakens our parents to the fact that parenting is a full-time, involved, long-term process. As Dr. Maribotoho mentioned just now, it's not something that you do as a reactive response. It is something that is ongoing, involved in the life of that particular child. So, you can't, I do agree that you do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. As I pointed earlier, spanking does have its advantages, but when used the way it did in that particular episode, using religious reasons to actually chastise a child, I think in that particular case it produces more harm than permanent change in the child's behavior. Because remember that spanking is a very quick and a very short, as Dr. Maribotoho says, reactive response to a particular misdemeanor.
Dr. Maribotoho.
So like I pointed earlier, it has to be, yes.
Dr. Maribotoho,
yes,
are we not really then becoming perhaps a nanny state where everything that we do in our homes are prescribed by government? And are there perhaps any dangers that the ruling holds?
No, I don't think so, Elvis. I think what this ruling does is gives us an opportunity as parents to come up with better ways of dealing with our children. I think sometimes we say it's important for parents to listen to their kids. And when we look at how we were brought up, our parents never had time to sit down and listen to our views. You understand what I'm saying? So yes, what this legislation does, it says to parents, it's now time to sit down and actively listen to your children. You understand? And then they'll tell you what they want. This legislation is not going to take parents to court over trivial things. This legislation gives parents a chance to talk to their children and not resort to violence. Because when you're spanking a child, you're modeling the kind of behavior that you want to quash in a child. You want to change in a child. Now, you spanking the child, you being violent, and violence begets violence. So I mean, we have a lot. Violence in our communities is getting out of hand, and this legislation, I think, will help us to get to the bottom of it.
Now, there are those segments in civil society that disagree heavily with this particular ruling. Dr. Jairam, in closing, spanking, you earlier said, is only one of the ways to discipline a child. But in this particular case, where the child was exposing himself to pornography, what should have been the alternative besides spanking?
Okay, one needs to understand that we are also living in an era where the exposure to pornography and sexual issues are so, it's so exposed that anybody can actually stumble into a pornographic site. So I think the parents should have actually understood the context in which this child is living, as well as the exposure, the so easy exposure, to a country, I will say, that is so rife with sexual material and sexual innuendos. So I think with that particular type of understanding, as Dr. Maribuworth pointed out, is that the parent ought to have sat with the child and explained to the child the dangers of that kind of behavior which is addictive. One cannot necessarily blame the child totally for being exposed to that kind of exposure. It's not something that he willfully wanted to do. He needs to understand, the parent needs to understand that our youngsters today are surrounded. It is so easy to stumble into these sites.
Yes. Doctors, I thank you so much for your time.
That
was practicing psychologist and lecturer, Dr. Linda Jairam, as well as the educational psychologist, Dr. Henry Maribatoho. Both of them are from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, that's where we got to leave it for now. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we will continue this discussion, and I would like to get your thoughts. To spank or not to spank? That is my question to you. Let's take a break.
Sports Live, Saturday and Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
Did you know smacking your child is now officially illegal in South Africa? The South Gauteng High Court ruled that the common law defense of reasonable chastisement is not in line with the Constitution, and it no longer applies in the South African law. That means grabbing a child by the ear or pinching a thigh too is no longer permissible. The judgment did not create a new offense, as hitting a child has always been an assault under the country's criminal law in South Africa. However, Judge Raylene Keitley found that such defense was inconsistent with the Constitution. The Deputy Director of the Center for Child Law at University of Pretoria, Karabo Osa, now joins us from our Pretoria studios. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
First and foremost, let me get your reaction from the judgment.
Well, I mean, our center represented 3 organizations that made submissions to the court agreeing that the defense was unconstitutional. So obviously we are happy about the outcome of the matter.
You're happy with the outcome?
Yes, we are. I mean, as you've been saying, the court found that the defense is not compatible with the Constitution because we have rights of children in the Constitution, in the Children's Act, that we meant to protect. But then we made provision for a special defense where children are being exposed to physical punishment. So those are the reasons why we are, it's something that needed to happen. It should have come a long time ago, and there had been attempts in the past to do it. Because it's a controversial issue, there's always been stumbling blocks, but the court went as far as to say, well, in the context of this case, let me raise this issue and deal with it. and found that it's not constitutionally compliant to still have the defense of reasonable chastisement.
Mm-hmm. Legally, where do we draw the line between discipline and punishment?
Well, I mean, discipline does not equal punishment, and that's the other thing we need to, you know, it's good that you had educational psychologists. People equate disciplining children with physical punishment in particular. And when you look at the definition of discipline, it doesn't include, it's not just about physical punishment, and that's what we need to teach people. So in relation to the defense of reasonable chastisement, I think one of the difficulties is determining what is reasonable and who's judging what is reasonable. It's always been an issue. So the parent thinks it's reasonable for them to smack a child 10 times on the bum. The other one thinks a slap on the face once is reasonable, but the child is the one who's receiving the corporal punishment. And how do you then say that that's reasonable? And where does then the protection for the child step in, and the law saying, well, you should protect them from neglect, maltreatment, physical punishment?
Mm-hmm. Now, the judge did emphasize that the intention was not really to charge parents with a crime, but rather to guide and support the parents in finding more positive and effective ways of disciplining children. But there are those, and especially parents, that cry out and says, but that's the only way we know. So what alternatives are open to them?
It's very difficult because, you know, as the psychologists were saying earlier on, there are a lot of methods, but physical punishment or corporal punishment seems to be the quickest that people go to. The whole point is that we need to be moving away to where we see positive discipline as one of the things we need to promote. That is talking to your children, explaining why they're doing something wrong, what are the consequences. And those things, as one of the doctors you were interviewing earlier said, it's very time consuming. But it means we must be more present in how we parent and not just resort to the quickest, simplest solution for that time. Obviously, positive discipline requires a lot, not only from parents, but from everyone. You mentioned earlier, we've done away with corporal punishment in the schools, but it's still happening. And the question is, what have we done in that space to promote positive discipline methods that teachers can use to correct learners? So it's saying to the society that we need to now upscale on the need to then find positive discipline methods and equipping parents and having parenting classes, things like that, that could then equip them to then not have to resort to physical punishment and understand the psychology of children better.
What would you say to those parents who would now say that children seems to have carte blanche in terms of their rights, but the parents' rights are being trampled upon?
You know, it's something that worries me, and we shouldn't take it lightly. We have a constitution that's given everybody in South Africa rights, and children were given specific rights because they regarded as vulnerable. And we have the responsibility to look after them. South Africa is facing serious issues in relation to violence against children and women. And, you know, 50 years ago, men used to beat up women with impunity without having to have any repercussions. And now we have this small area where we're saying, well, for children as well, let's do away with the special defense and start working towards a positive discipline methods. And the aim is not to criminalize parents. I mean, I think this case that we led to this finding was a rare case. You don't have children running to the police stations every day laying charges against their parents. And research has shown that even children who are exposed to the most extreme corporal punishment. So we're not saying parents are going to be punished left, right, center. We're saying all of us as a society with such high rates of violence against children must reflect, and also reflect about how, you know, one of the psychologists again said, you must model the behavior. If you're smacking your child and they get to school, they become the bully in the school. What are we saying? Where's the country going? And that's where we need to start focusing and not just see this as the state is now telling us what to do. The state has a constitution that we all said we'll abide by, and that what the judge said and did was just to say we have these duties according to the constitution to protect children, and we must man up now and make it clear that we cannot have a special defense in relation to the most vulnerable citizens of the country.
Now, Ms. Ozar, we're also conducting a poll, and of course we're asking our viewers today what do they make of this particular court ruling, if they agree that make spanking your child illegal. And so far we have 80% of South Africans and people on the continent of Africa saying no, they do not agree with the ruling that makes spanking their child illegal. Only 20% agree. What do you say to that? And I asked the question earlier to the psychologist as well. Are we not becoming a nanny state?
No, we're not becoming a nanny state. The state makes laws and rules that we must abide by, and it gives people rights that other people must respect. So this is really what it comes down to, and we are also signatories to international treaties that we must comply with. When we report to them, we must say what we're doing to advance and to better protect children. These are difficult issues. It's similar to saying tomorrow we want to bring back capital punishment. If you do that, people are fed up with crime. You'll find that 90% may say yes, but it's not as simple as that. We as a country change the way we deal with human rights and the way we deal with each other as a society. And violence is one of the things that as a country we're struggling with totally today.
Yes.
And corporal punishment is physical, punishment is violence, is something that can be linked, as we were talking about the studies that have shown the link sometimes between the smacking that you just call smacking and serious violence against children. So, you know, with polls, you can never really win. It's always going to be those things where people feel, you know, who are you to tell us this? We are fed up with children who don't listen.
Yes.
But
yes.
We need something more nuanced and more thought through.
Ms. Ozar, that's where we got to leave it. I thank you so much for joining us in our Pretoria studios. That was the Deputy Director of the Centre for Child Law at the University of Pretoria. And that's where we got to leave it for now. But, of course, you can still participate in the poll. It's open to you. To spank or not to spank? That's the question. It's time for your weather forecast because it's getting hot in here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's take a look at that weather. We'll start off by taking a look at what's going on in terms of South Africa's weather for today. A little bit of rainfall forecast mainly for the afternoon and the evening towards South Africa's southern interior, the southern and the western coastlines. Now, a lot of this originates from low pressure systems which have just been migrating south. That's also drawing in quite a bit of rainfall towards Namibia there. And of course, we do continue to see the rainfall around Angola and the eastern parts of the DRC. It's not only today, but into tomorrow. However, into tomorrow, a high pressure system moving off the eastern coastline and just starting to spread in towards that eastern interior. That's going to cause a slightly larger area of sunshine towards the eastern parts of South Africa, towards the southern parts of Zimbabwe and the eastern regions of Botswana. But we are still seeing some showers towards the western regions of South Africa as well as the southern interior. So let's take a look at your temperatures. Well, it is getting hot indeed. Cape Town, 35 degrees Celsius. Uppington, the same for today. Vredendal in the Western Cape will peak at about 40 degrees. So a very hot day there indeed. And we're expecting some showers, but mainly in the afternoon and the evening. So that won't help to cool down the daytime highs there. 28 degrees in Pretoria. Neighboring states expecting warm conditions as well. Now, conditions such as 29-degree highs in Windhoek are rather normal, but we do see some rainfall there, which is good. Victoria Falls 28, but temperatures in Maun and Gaborone peaking at 30 degrees Celsius, which of course, as we know, is rather warm. So as we move on to our island regions for today, we see temperatures ranging from 23 to 31 degrees Celsius. We will see quite a bit of rainfall there as well, but it's only isolated showers for the most part. Not too many stormy systems actually moving through that area. Now, what we are going to see in the central regions of Africa is quite different. A lot of electrical activity forecast, mainly in the afternoon and the evening for stormy systems there, and those are passing storms with, in some regions anyway, daytime rainfall, lighter rainfall in the form of driving rain. Very quickly tomorrow, rather the northern parts of Africa here for today, expecting some showers and thunder showers extending as far as the central latitudes of the Central African Republic. That's where we're going to leave your weather for now. Stay with us here on the SABC.
Show me a greater power on the whole continent of Africa. Show me a greater power anywhere.
The 6th of June 1918 was the establishment of our movement to maintain that, we need to do something about the educational upliftment of the Afrikaner, and we also need to do something about the economic upliftment of the Afrikaner. And that was the two main goals at that stage in 1918.
The Brotherhood never was a cultural organization. It was a state-capturing organization. It is, in fact...
I like that term.
It has captured the financial systems. It has captured the parastatals. It has captured cultural organizations.
For all your constitutional and legal matters, tune into Rights and Recourse on Sundays between 2 and 3 Central African Time.
Morning and a warm welcome, Jumbo Africa, to the second hour here on the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Muhammad.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. Today, the focus is on the protests against farm murder scandal countrywide. It seems like there's a huge number of people turning up in Cape Town for that particular march.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting that we have that this particular Monday morning. And we want to find out from you, to get involved in this conversation, we want to find out there's 71 farm killings in 2017 so far. Do you think that these protests, the one that's being had today against farm murders, puts focus on the issue?
And when we talk about that 71, it's not just about farmers, it's about farm workers as well. And that's why we're asking that question, because we want to find out from you. Thokozani says the issue of mistreating our black farm workers should also be addressed along with these killings. We can't agree with you more than that, Thokozani. That's also one of the issues that should be addressed.
Jennifer Rundle comes in with, unfortunately, it's become racist. If blacks don't support the cause, they should arrange a protest for black on black killing.
Now that's the type of comment we don't really need in a brand new South Africa, democratic South Africa that cater for everybody in this country. But we also focus, of course, on Gauteng High Court ruling. That rule that you, yes, you, should not smack your child anymore. It's official. It's illegal to do that. The common law defense of reasonable chastisement is not in line with the Constitution, and therefore it no longer applies to South African law.
Very interesting, and we want to find out from you, do you agree with this ruling that makes spanking your child illegal?
Well, you heard some earlier voices that says, no, we should abide by the court ruling. We're going to find out a little bit later from a different voice, an alternative voice to that so far.
Mahalo Mudiba has got a very categoric no, he says.
Tundu says, when a child behaves bad, we blame the guardian. When a child is well disciplined, we praise the guardian. It's nonsense to make spanking illegal, says Tundu.
Well, there you go.
Strong views, very strong views. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But as usual, we have a sports question. Lewis Hamilton, the man of the moment, the first black Brit that made it 4 in a row, Kendall.
You know, you keep saying black Brit, you know, he's the first black man to get that far in Formula One.
Yes.
And he's done it. He's now a fourth-time world champion, matches Sebastian Vettel, and he's right up there with the best. We want to find out from you, does Lewis Hamilton winning his 4th Formula One title do anything to you? What are your views on that?
So far, Shubham says, what an achievement. He joins the elite. I think he's the best of his generation. He's been the best driver since his debut in 2007.
All right. Nazim Khropom says, you know what? Lewis is good. Lewis Hamilton, and he hashtags pre and SABC News. Obviously, Nazim enjoying Lewis Hamilton's performances on the circuit.
Now you can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Enough is enough. That's the rallying cry from farmers across the country that take to the streets today to demand urgent action against farm attacks. On the continent, Kenya's Electoral Commission expected to announce the result of the presidential rerun vote today. And further afield in Europe, hundreds of thousands of people in Barcelona are rallying in Spain for Spanish unity in opposition to Catalonia's bid for independence. Well, those are your headlines, and before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you very much. There's lots going on in the world of sports, and let me not take too much time. Let's get right into it. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
Sasa inababeka phambili. Tubeli hleli shot.
It's Telkom Knockout Weekend, and as Samuel Julius' strike helps Chippa United cause the biggest upset of the last 16 in the Telkom Knockout, for the first time they beat Mamelodi Sundowns, even as Cape Town City fall to Baroka.
6-7 phases from Western Province.
Western Province comes from behind to score an emphatic 33-21 victory over the Sharks in Durban in the Currie Cup final.
And he's going for his second of the afternoon.
Strikes this through the covers. They'll be able to turn for the second. This will be the fastest 100 in world cricket.
David Miller's record-breaking 35-ball ton seals the deal as the Proteas send Bangladesh home after inflicting a 7-0 tour whitewash. Max Verstappen wins the Mexico Grand Prix, but the day belongs to Lewis Hamilton, whose 9th place finish is good enough to seal an astounding 4th Formula One driver's title with 2 races to go.
It doesn't feel real, man. I mean, obviously, that's not the kind of race that I want when you're 40 seconds behind or something. But, you know, I never gave up, and that's really, I guess, what's important, what's in my heart. I kept going right to the end.
Well, there you have it. 10:40, we'll bring you all this in more detail. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Protests against farm murders are due to be held in Cape Town in Pretoria today. The city of Cape Town is appealing to motorists to be patient as roads in and around the city are expected to be congested due to the mass action. Civil rights group AfriForum says there have been 341 farm attacks with 71 people murdered since the beginning of this year. Farmers and civil society groups are expected to gather at Klapmuts near Stellenbosch this morning. Well, they have gathered already, and the march will begin this morning at Canon Kop in Stellenbosch and proceed to the R102 and the R101 and link up to the Old Paarl Road. It will move through Kraaifontein and Brackenfell up to Voortrekker Road, and then to Belleville, Parow, Goodwood, Kensington and the Maitland areas of Cape Town. It's reported that protests will also be held on highways, access ramps around Pretoria. We also understand that it happened on the R59 on the way from Vereniging to Johannesburg as well. Now, the Gauteng Department of Education has made a concession for grade 12 learners stuck in traffic in the province to be allowed to write their mathematics paper 1 examination if they arrive in the exam room an hour later than the starting time. Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona says invigilators have been asked to accommodate these learners, but those who do not make it to the exam room in the hour will have to write their papers next year during the supplementary period, as exam centres are governed by strict rules. Mabona also spoke about the department's preparedness with the onset of the Matric exams.
We going very well in terms of the process. Process is smooth. Though, you know, last week, the first 2 days, we were challenged by those that they were denied an opportunity to write because they are modularized. But then they were given multiple opportunities, because if they say we are modularized, you can only write probably 3 of your subjects that we have passed during pre-trial examination. The rest of their subjects will then be writing them next year in June. So that gives you an ample time to prepare, because you did not do well, you know, during this period in the pre-trial examination. You are given an opportunity to can then do the 3 that you have failed, so that you pass and you are then certificated, you know, next year around July. So some of them and their parents, they said, no, we want to write because you know, we've got all the subjects, you know, in the timetable, the original timetable, besides the one that we've given them. So they were insisting that they want to write. And then we said, let's not disrupt the examinations. Let's give them an opportunity to write, and we'll see on administratively how we're going to manage that process. But besides that, the process is going very well.
For those that's not doing too well during this course of the exams, what sort of assistance will the department give them, the matriculants, that is, beginning of the year next year?
There is a supplementary, you know, period, but then those that I've just spoken about, those that we have modularized, those are the struggling ones, the ones that we actually have moved from grade 11 to grade 12. To say one cannot be stuck in a schooling environment for so many years. Meanwhile, we see that this person is struggling. So let's make sure that one at least have a certificate, because with the certificate, you are given opportunities. I mean, a certificate can open so many doors. So we felt that let's give them multiple opportunities, and making sure that at least they write the 3 that they have passed during pre-trial examination, and the other 3 they can then write next year. So that's an opportunity that we've availed as a department.
The African National Congress has wished the IFP leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi a good retirement, saying that he has played his part in the liberation of South Africa. The Inkatha Freedom Party made the announcement of its leader's retirement at a press conference in Durban following an extended council meeting yesterday. The IFP's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary Velenkosini Slabisa looks to be the favourite to take over the party reins. 88-year-old Buthelezi has led the IFP since its inception in 1975. He will step down as the party's president after its National General Elective Conference in December. Stay tuned for our interview with the IFP Chief Whip Naran Singh, of course, who had that interview a little bit earlier and on Morning Live to tell us more about the retirement of Chief Buthelezi.
His departure is going to have an impact on the party, but what we are pleased about is the fact that he has offered himself to guide us in the next few years, as long as his health allows him, and he's willing to do so. We're not going to put any pressure on him to do that, but it's always good to have a father figure around to guide you, to mentor you, to make sure you don't make mistakes and correct you where you're wrong. So to that extent, I think we're extremely pleased as members of the party that his presence will still be felt, although he will be taking it much easier than he has done for the last 50 or 60 years. The age of Mr. Slabisa probably would have been already disclosed in the media, but he is 52, so he's got a long way to go in politics. Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi is much younger than him, and he will also have an opportunity to grow. But I can see a number of younger leaders emerging within the ranks of the IFP. We've got the young members of parliament, and watch this space. We'll have even younger members of parliament moving forward because we believe that the young people of our country have not been as forthright coming out and voting in elections because they felt there was no need, leave it to everybody else. But the time demands that every single person in this country has to come to the polls and cast his or her vote.
Meanwhile, the Higher Education Fees Commission report is expected to be released by the President Jacob Zuma this week. It was reported at the weekend that the report has been leaked and that it concludes that South Africa cannot afford universal free higher education. Earlier, SABC News spoke to Professor Lesiba Tefu of the Institute for African Renaissance Studies at UNISA for his views.
The ideal is that we should provide free education, free health services, and indeed, to the extent possible, provide quality infrastructure. But resources are not infinite. And by the way, this debate is not new. I've been in the higher education sector for the past over 30 years now, and I've been part of this debate for a long time. I don't see it being realized, being achieved. But what government did, and I commend the ANC government for this, was to step in with TEFSA at one stage, NEFSAS at a later stage. All these were intended to assist those who didn't have the wherewithal to achieve higher education.
Meanwhile, the High Court in Cape Town will continue hearing an application this morning for an interdict against the protesting students at the University of Cape Town. Now, there have been renewed protests on university campuses as students demand the urgent release of the much-awaited Higher Education Fees Commission report. President Jacob Zuma said at the weekend that it would be released this week. Meanwhile, University South Africa, which is the umbrella body for the country's universities, has expressed concern at the reported leaking of the report. It was reported at the weekend that the 748-page report concludes that South Africa cannot afford universal free higher education and proposes an overhaul of the funding system instead. University South Africa says that they are concerned that this could inflame a highly tense political environment and expand the protests at universities and compromise end-of-year examinations.
when I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, you know, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, you know, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007, when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, you know what, for you there's no quick reach, you know, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Family First New Zealand, a leading family group in New Zealand, has warned South African families that a smacking ban will do more harm than good by criminalizing good parents and then harming children and families, with little effect on the real issue of child abuse. Now, various organizations have reacted differently to the ruling by the South Gauteng High Court judge, Raylene Knightley, who found that a Muslim father who kicked and beat his 13-year-old son for visiting pornographic websites could not rely on the defense of reasonable chastisement. She found that common law defense was unconstitutional and invalid. In Cape Town, we are joined by Childline, represented by Simone Sangster, as well as Michael Swain from the Christian organization Freedom of Religion South Africa. A very good morning to you and welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Michael, let me first get your reaction to the judgment. What do you say to South Africans in regards to the judgment that indicate that you cannot smack your child anymore, even if they are in the wrong?
Well, we think that this is a very unfortunate development for a number of reasons. The first being that effectively what's happened is that with a single stroke of a pen, a judge has removed what is actually part of the parental toolkit for bringing up and looking after and educating their children. So that is one issue. The other issue is that even if such a defense were to be removed, our contention is that it would be far better for that to be the end result of a proper parliamentary process, where obviously a much more discussion can be put into it, much more input can be taken, and the situation can then obviously be resolved with due legal and parliamentary process, rather than a single judge making a ruling. Bearing in mind, of course, that this is something which will literally affect millions of parents going forward, and therefore it is something of great and significant public interest and concern.
And your thoughts on that, Simone?
So Childline takes the stance of agreeing with the judgment that has taken place. We do believe that physical discipline can have many effects on children and cause consequences that we often don't see. We do see that parents use physical discipline as an option, and it may work in the interim, but studies have shown that it doesn't always show that there is consistent change in a child's behavior.
Now, to both of you, and starting off with you, Michael, what kind of discipline should be maintained within a home environment, and how do we differentiate between assault and reasonable and measured discipline out of love?
I think you've just mentioned the right word, loving discipline. That is definitely how parents should bring up their children. And there is a huge difference between violence and abuse of children and loving chastisement, which again should always be, I think in many cases it is, a last resort, should always be done with the best interests of the child in mind and to educate the child between the difference of right and wrong. I think the problem that we will find, having taken this defense away and effectively said to parents that even the lightest smack will now literally criminalize them, is that we don't really have much else alternative available. Not so far as we can ascertain. And I think we need to understand as well the context of what we face in South Africa. You know, 30 million people are living below 1,000 rand a month as an income, and often in very overcrowded accommodation. And so therefore, things like, you know, if your child misbehaves, they must be sent to the naughty corner, or you will remove some privileges. Well, in these instances, that simply doesn't apply. So really what you've done is effectively disempowered parents rather than empowered them.
Do you agree with that, Simone, that parents have been disempowered to maintain discipline in their families? And if so, what alternatives are available to them?
So we don't believe in physical discipline being the only option. We do believe that there are other options that one can take hold of when disciplining your children. But what we also believe is that we should create a conversation. We should also create a platform for parents to be educated around the different forms of discipline before a child misbehaves. So having those conversations with your children in the home before your child actually misbehaves. It doesn't have to be a resort to disciplining your child then. So we do believe that things like timeout, things like taking away of privileges, talking positively to your child, positive reinforcement are all options that we do believe strongly in.
Mm-hmm. Now, Michael, to smack or not to smack, that is the question. But what is the international trend worldwide on this issue?
The international trend actually varies. Now, some countries have brought in a ban. Others have taken what we believe is perhaps a better view, which is they have taken the trouble through their legislatures, the UK being one such example, to carefully and closely define what is moderate and reasonable chastisement. And I think that's very much the way to go. For example, obviously punching, kicking, lashing somebody with an electric cable or something. These are clear instances of assault. And where the legislature has actually now defined them, we think that is a far better way, because then you leave the option open to parents. And we absolutely agree, there are many, many other ways of disciplining children. But in this instance, you're not only taking away something which parents have historically used, but you're actually also criminalizing them. And bear in mind that when you've been accused of assault or child abuse, which effectively this will now be, then that is a very major impact on the family dynamics, just that single thing. If you're convicted, you could easily lose your job. It can have definitely drastic implications, which I think one would reasonably say is not necessarily at all in the best interests of the child.
Now, it seems, Simone, that there is some contradictions to the judgment, because the judgment says that parents who administer corporal punishment to their children should not be randomly prosecuted and punished. So, is that perhaps contradiction to what is supposed to happen, that you should not smack your child at all?
I think what the judgment has done is now given or allowed more protection for children. Before, where parents were able to plead reasonable chastisement, that was more protecting the adult in the instance. So with the judgment being that a parent may no longer plead reasonable chastisement, I think this is a victory for children's rights. I think that children are now protected even more by the law. The law already states that assault or any physical violence against a child is illegal. And so without having the option to plead reasonable chastisement, because we do believe that there is a very fine line between physically disciplining your child and it being abuse.
Michael, what is next for parents in South Africa? What can they do? Is a referendum perhaps on the cards to discuss this issue with each and every parent in this country to ensure that their views are heard?
No, there is no such thing as a referendum when a high court has made a judgment. So this is now the law of the land, and parents effectively, as of when the judgment was handed down, if they raise a hand or in any way chastise physically their children, they will potentially be arrested and criminalized. And that, as I say, I think is a major problem. It's all very well to say that this won't happen in many cases, but there's frankly absolutely no way that you can distinguish or set down accurate guidelines, because you have now taken away that defense. So the immediate and first response must be, therefore, to charge a parent with an assault.
So their hands are basically cut off, that is now, the parents?
Well, effectively, yes, that's the case. So you're not allowed to anymore. It's the law of the land. So any parent who now does that, as I say, will potentially face the full force of the law for doing what they would otherwise have been considered perhaps to be a loving way of disciplining and raising their children. That option has been settled now by a judge, and it is no longer an option. They must simply not do it any longer.
So, Simone, it's now at the behest of the parents to probably get some training who don't know anything better than smacking their child.
Absolutely. Changing a parent's behavior or system of discipline is a difficult thing. It's a challenging thing. A number of parents have had discipline styles handed over from generation to generation. And so we do recognize that it isn't always easy, and sometimes physical discipline is the go-to. But we do believe that with interventions and educations, NGOs can step up and really spend time educating parents around positive discipline, positive reinforcement, and making sure that parents are aware of the other options and also aware of the effects of physical discipline on their children.
And then lastly, Michael, to you, I've asked the question earlier, but do you think perhaps this makes our country a nanny state?
Well, obviously what's happened is that the judge has taken a decision on behalf of all parents, what is in the best interest of their child. And even from a freedom of religion point of view, which is the organization that I represent, many Christian parents do believe that physical discipline, as I said, always in love, always in moderation, always within reason, is an option for them. But the judge has now decided that even that religious conviction is no longer acceptable or appropriate. So that is definitely an infringement of freedom of religion rights for those parents who believe to the contrary. So yes, I do think it is a regrettable decision, because again, there is not time with the best will in the world to now educate parents of alternatives. The law applies as of last Thursday. So whether we're ready or not, it is now criminalized, and we don't believe that there are necessarily sufficient alternatives in place. Bearing in mind as well that social studies do also state the other opinion, which is that sometimes it can very well be, and it has been shown to be by studies, in the best interest of the child to have some form of moderate and reasonable corporate discipline in the loving parental environment.
Well, you said it. There is no time, Baba. Now that was Childland, represented by Simone Sangster as well as Michael Swain from Christian organization Freedom of Religion South Africa. To spank or not to spank? That is the question. Let's take a look at what you are telling us on our poll and how you voted in relation to this. Do you agree with the ruling that makes spanking your child illegal? 271 votes in. There's some very angry parents out there in South Africa and on the continent. 80% are suggesting no. We do not agree with that ruling. Only 20% are agreeing with it. Kenneth Malachi says, a spank is not to kill them, but to put them in line. Stay in your lane, says Kenneth. Parents are the ones responsible for the future and the growth of their kids, not the law. Bertram Leslie says, what next? Will it be illegal to tell your child when to come home? Illegal to speak to them in a firm tone? Remember what happened to Robert McBride in relation to that, speaking firm to his child and chastising his child. He's in court for that. Well, keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue right here, but we'll take a short break. But in fact, before we get to that break even, we're going to go live to Life Esidimeni, which is currently underway. It's the arbitration process here in Parktown, Johannesburg.
Ms. Franks, I'm sorry, Ms. Franks, where are you currently employed?
I'm not employed at the moment.
In 2016, what occupation were you involved in? 2016, 2015?
Okay, 2015 I was actually employed at the AFM Revival Center.
20 what?
15.
From what period to what period?
Okay, it was from 2013 to 2016, February.
2016 February?
Yes.
From 2013. What is that organization?
It's AFM Revival, welfare organization.
And what were you employed as?
I was employed as a manager for the mental patients.
A manager for mental patients?
Yes.
And what is your educational background?
Okay, I was working at CETA before, and I was just a financial credit controller.
Financial credit controller?
Yes.
Any qualification in the care of mental patients?
No.
You don't
I was
have?
just working in the welfare department.
Okay.
You're working as a financial controller at CETA.
Yes, Justice.
Which CETA was it?
It's States Information Technology.
State Information Technology. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Any experience you have had in taking care of mental patients? Have you had that?
No, I didn't have any. I was just working in the welfare department and just doing welfare work for the church.
Okay. For the church?
Yes.
Okay. Then, do you know the entity called Anchor House or Anchor Home?
Yes.
How do you know it?
Okay, I registered the NPO for myself as Anchor House, Anchor Center.
When did you register it?
Sorry, its formal name was Anchor Center.
Center. Yes.
And you say you registered it?
That's right, under social development.
When did you register it?
Okay, I received my NPO certificate on the 12th of April.
Yes. And you had registered it
April of which year?
2016.
Yes.
And you had registered it for what purpose?
Okay, for the mentally disabled people.
Why did you do that?
For what purpose? Repeat the purpose.
Sorry?
What was the purpose of the NPO?
For the severe mental patients.
For caring?
Yes.
For severe
Yes, Justice.
mental patients?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And let me take you to one of the bundle of documents, that is 7. It should be in front of you. Specifically page 38, no.
Is it not?
It's 2385, I'm sorry. That is bundle 7. I'm sorry, it's, no.
Is this
I think
the
it's not
bundle?
before you. You'll be assisted with a copy of that. Uh, 2385.
Could I get a bundle also? Could I take advantage of you? Ka Setswana ga thwe mogolo o rongwa a eme ka dinawa, ke re mo? Ke a leboga. A ke itse lobakeng o ile kae, o na le mo? Thank you.
2385, are you there?
Yes.
Ms. Franks?
Yes, Councillor.
Do you know what document is that?
It's the license from which we received from Health Department.
That is your license?
Yes.
And when did you apply for it?
Okay, I applied for it in April.
In April?
Yes.
And do you see the date when it was issued there?
Yes, I do.
That is the 1st of April,
April, yes.
2016.
Yes, Councillor.
And in relation to that date, when did you apply for it?
Okay, I applied actually. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry for that. Okay, when we registered our NPO, we gave all the documents to Health Department.
Yes.
And I'm really not sure what was the date that we gave it to them.
You're not sure about which date?
Yes.
The date on which you applied
that's,
for it?
That's right, Justice.
Yes. Ms. Franks, I'm told that they can't hear you. Can you pull that mic forward to you, that mouthpiece?
Like that?
And both you and counsel should speak louder, please.
Okay, I'll do so. Is it fine?
Yeah. You had indicated that you had registered this in order to care for the mentally ill patients. And that is your license for the registration of the NPO?
Yes, Counsel.
Yes. Where were these mentally ill patients going to come from?
Okay,
But before you get there, the license purports to have been issued on the 1st of April 2016. But when did you apply for it?
As I'm saying,
You were registered on the 12th of April 2016.
Yeah. My NPO was registered on the 12th of April.
But the license was issued on the 1st of April 2016.
Yes, Councillor.
So the license purports to have been issued 11 days before you received your NPO registration.
Yes,
Is that correct?
Yes, Justice. I don't know whether it was a mistake from our department, but as I'm saying, when I received it, I saw the dates.
Yeah.
And you can't remember when you applied for the license
Okay,
in terms of the Mental Health Care Act?
Okay, we had a meeting in 2015 where they discussed that we can apply for the licenses, but we didn't register as that.
Tell me about the meeting. Where was the meeting?
Okay, the meeting was held at Sterkfontein.
Who convened the meeting? Who called you to the meeting?
Okay, they sent me an email in connection with the meeting.
Justice Seneca, perhaps let me intervene there.
Yes.
There's a bundle of documents in front of you, one of which it starts with ELA 49. The next one is 50. The next one is 51. A loose bundle of documents. Do you have them there?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay. What is ELA 49?
This is the meeting that they sent me, the mail that they sent to me.
That is the invitation you
Yes.
have been referring Justice Moseneke to.
That's right.
Okay. You can go ahead and explain that.
Okay, the meeting was just to say, as you can see on the email, the meeting date will be on the issues regarding the life Esidimeni movement. But we didn't receive any minutes from that.
Yes, let me assist you. In the middle of the document there, that is ELA 49, it says, "Dear all." It comes from Jacobus Hana, dated 9 November 2015, at 10:25 a.m. Underneath there, it says, "Dear all, in relation to a meeting of NGO that is for 13 November 2015 at 9:30. Please be informed of the meeting scheduled for all NGOs in the regions to attend. Please be informed that an urgent meeting scheduled for the 13 November 2015 for 9:30. The meeting date will be on issues regarding the Life Esidimeni movement. All NGO managers must be present to discuss NGO placement and admission. Venue, Sterfontein Hospital, Auditorium, date 13 November 2015, time 9:30. Kind regards. Is that the email you received, the invitation you received?
Councillor. Yes, Councillor.
Yes?
By then, did you know who Hannah Jacobus is?
No, I didn't know because I was actually working for the NPO of the AFM revival.
Do you know why you were invited?
Because I was just thinking because I was busy with the home for the AFM Revival Center.
Did the NGO you had been working for at the time when this communication or invitation was sent to you, did it take care of mentally ill patients?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay, so you were invited in your capacity as an NGO that takes care of mentally ill patients?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay. And then you responded to this invitation and attended the meeting. I guess that is correct?
Yes, Councillor.
And what were you informed at the meeting?
As I said, we didn't receive any minutes from the meeting, but in the meeting they were just talking about the movement they're going to do at Life.
Yeah. And I'm correct that as at that time, your NGO, that is Anchor Home or Care or Center, had not as yet been registered.
Yes, Councillor, wasn't registered yet.
And as at that time, you were fully employed by your, that is the NGO you worked for?
That's right, Councillor.
Okay. Then what were you then informed at that meeting about?
Rephrase the question, please.
What were you called for at that meeting?
Okay, they called us if we can extend our NGO,
yes,
or you can open up a new one.
So it was an invitation for those who did not have NGOs to form NGOs or register NGOs to take care of mentally ill patients.
That's right,
And
Councillor.
where were these patients going to come from?
Sorry, which patients?
Where were these mentally ill patients going to come from for the new NGOs?
The one that we had on AFM?
No.
Okay.
You had said that you were advised to extend your existing NGOs or to form new NGOs. For what purpose?
So they will be coming from Life.
Life is the main.
That's right.
Okay. And were you informed when were those patients going to come through to
No,
those NGOs?
They didn't specify the dates.
Who chaired the meeting?
It was Dr. Malamela.
Did she say they were going to remove patients receiving mental health care from Life Esidimeni to NGOs?
Yes, Justice.
Did she say why they were going to do that?
No, Justice.
Did you ask why are they moving these mentally ill patients from Esidimeni to yourselves?
I didn't ask in the meeting.
Yes. And were you ever required to be, or to have acquired some experience in this field of taking care of mentally ill patients before you could receive patients from Life Esidimeni or what?
No, they didn't.
They didn't.
No.
So anyone else without experience could just receive patients from Life Esidimeni?
Okay, for me it was only because I was working with the patients from the AFM Revival Center.
What else was required other than the registration for a new NGO to receive patients, as was explained by Dr. Manamela, if it was explained at the meeting?
That was actually not explained, but as I'm saying, it was only because I was running the NPO where I take care of the mentally patient.
So,
and you decided to register your own NGO?
Yes, Justice.
Mm. And you called it Anchor Center?
Yes, Justice.
And was your plan to operate separate and away from your employer of the time?
Yes, Justice.
But you had no qualifications, you've already told us,
yes,
of taking care of mentally ill patients.
Okay, what happened? Because, on the NPO that I was running, there was all the nurses and care workers that work there.
Okay, just listen to the question again, and I want an answer from you. You had no qualifications in mental health care, is that right?
Yes, Justice.
You had no experience in looking after people requiring mental health care.
Yes, Justice.
You could either learn something by qualifications or by experience, but you had neither. You didn't have qualifications and you didn't have experience. Is that correct?
Yes, Justice.
But you went ahead and registered your own NGO.
Yes, Justice.
And you went ahead and applied for a license under the Mental Health Care Act.
Yes, Justice.
At the meeting, did they tell you what you were going to be paid? I'm talking about the meeting of the 13th of November 2015 at Sterkfontein.
No, they didn't talk about any pay that we're going to get.
Did you talk about how you would look after these patients if you didn't talk about money?
Okay, because as I'm saying, because I was working with AFM Revival Centers, mental patients, and there was an amount that they gave to them. So we submitted documents to Health Department for the AFM Revival Center.
Yes, you got to put your voice just a little louder, please, so that we can record it. We are recording what we are doing here. What amount did they say they were going to pay an NGO that had applied for and was granted a license?
Okay, at that time, the amount that they paid for per person was 3,490.
3,490 per person. For how long? For a month? For a week?
For a month.
For a month. So they would pay you 3,490 rand per patient per month.
Yes, Justice.
Counsel?
Yes. And this 3,490, that is per person monthly, is this what your previous NGO used to claim from the department or what?
That's right, yes. But it was a little bit lower then they increased the price.
It was a little bit lower than 3,490.
Right.
Okay. When did they increase it?
It was, I think, in April. I'm not sure, but they've got the right dates when they increase it.
And before we proceed on that, let me take you back to that is the license. And your license makes reference to the fact that the address from which you are going to be operating is Kalafong Heights. Where is this?
Kalafong Heights is at Kalafong at the old nurses' quarters.
Yes. And further down there, it says for namely child residential care facility. That is, you were to receive children only.
No, I didn't receive children.
But your license limits you to children only. Is that so?
Yes, Councillor.
And you did not receive children only?
No, no children.
Okay. Now, we'll come to that later on. Then further down, or immediately below, it says maximum number of persons, it's 150.
Yes, Councillor.
And what does this signify is that as at the time when you made your application, you already had premises for 150 or to house 150 patients or what?
I didn't have the premises because why this Kalafong Heights was registered on that.
Yes.
Health department asked me to go and check with Mrs. Jacobus to go and check the premises at Kalafong.
And Hannah Jacobus advised you when?
That was in May. I'm not sure about the correct date. It was in May.
Of which year?
2016.
Remember, your application it should precede the issue of the license, which is 1 April 2016.
Yes, Councillor.
Yes. So I want to find out about the processes prior to you obtaining a license, that is a license that limits you to a number of 150 patients. Did you have those premises to house 150 patients?
I didn't have the premises yet.
Yes. Then how was this number determined?
Okay. They said we must go and look at the premises. There's 4 premises at Kalafong Heights that we can actually use. So the 2 was allocated to me. 1 was already in good condition and the other one was actually not in good condition. It was vandalized and they asked me to renovate the one.
Yes.
And that's where they count how many patients they could take in there.
Yes. You had said that they advised you to go and look at premises. Who are these they and
Okay,
when did they told you to do so?
It's, as I'm saying, I know it's in May, early May, and it was Anna Jacobus and Dr. Malamela.
Okay. So,
but well, when we cut to the chase, you know, we know you had no qualifications and no experience to take care of people suffering from mental disability. You had no premises, right?
Yes, Justice.
When you received your license, you had no actual patients, did you?
No, Justice.
When your license permitted you to look after 150 people, there was no rational basis for that.
Yes, Justice.
We can take it further. You had no staff to look after the 150 people. You were yet to establish a caring facility, isn't it so?
Okay, just in that sense that when I was working at the AFM, I was liaising with Health Nikon that all the care workers are working with. So I liaised with them so
But
that...
for Anchor Life, you had employed nobody.
No.
Do you have a staff?
Well, I didn't at that moment, but I liaised with them.
In May 2016, you had a piece of paper in your hand called a license. That appears on page 2385 of the bundle. Is that right?
23?
The license.
Okay. Yes, Justice.
That's about all that you had then. You had no patients, you had no premises, you had no employees to do the work.
Yes, Justice.
Did you have money? Had they given you this 3,490 rand per person per month?
No, I didn't have any money. I was just using my own pension money.
When for the first time did they pay you?
In September.
2015.
2016.
16. Did they pay you for, they pay you for 150 people?
No, Justice.
They paid you for how many people?
Only the patients that came in at Cullinan.
And how many were there?
Okay, it was 69.
69. And did they pay you for the arrears from April, May, June, July, August?
Not from April, but from June, when I took the first patients in.
And what was the gross amount that you received in September 2016?
Can I just have a look, Justice?
We can multiply 3490 times 69 times 5 months.
Sorry, Justice, I'm just looking for the June month one.
Yes. But from what you told us so far, it's quite a straightforward sum, actually.
Okay, but it was 239. I don't see June now here. I don't know why.
239,000 rand.
239,000.
239,000.
Is it not 500, over 500?
Okay, because...
It's not 535.
Have you got it there? Because I see I didn't...
I think it should be 535.
That's right, yes.
Thousands.
Yeah, for June.
No, it's fine. We'll come to that.
But what is the answer? Let me get the answer. You said you received how much? Simple calculation, I'm told, is 539,000.
Yes, for the 3 months.
Yeah,
from June, July, and August.
Yes, is that the amount that you received?
That's right, yes.
Very well. Counsel, proceed.
Yes.
Just over 500,000.
Yes. Now we know that you didn't have premises. You were advised by Hannah Jacobus and Dr. Manamela to go and renovate some premises at Kalafong Heights. Where did you end up? Did you occupy those premises?
No, Councillor.
Which premises did you occupy?
Cullinan.
Cullinan.
Yes, sir. Yes.
When did you occupy Cullinan?
From June.
June 2016.
June 2016.
Okay. Did you have a lease with Cullinan?
No, I didn't have.
Then how did you come to occupy Cullinan?
Okay, it was also through Dr. Malamela and Hannah. They arranged.
Yes. So You went to Kalafong Heights. You could not occupy those premises identified for you by Hannah Jacobus and Dr. Manamela. And why couldn't you occupy those premises?
Okay, the problem was we renovated one place and they said they will bring out the inspectors just to check the place because it was a double story, just to make sure that it is okay for the mental patients. And when the inspectors came out, they said they failed the place.
It's the fourth week of the Life Esidimeni arbitration process currently happening here in Parktown, Johannesburg. And of course, we're going to go back live there in a short while. But right now, let me just remind you of your news headlines. Enough is enough. Farmers across the country take to the streets today to demand urgent action against farm attacks. Kenya's Electoral Commission is expected to announce the result of the presidential rerun vote today. And hundreds of thousands of people in Barcelona at the rally for Spanish unity in opposition to Catalonia's bid for independence. Those are your news headlines, but right now, let's go back to the arbitration process here in Parktown, Johannesburg of the Life Esidimeni.
How many were children and how many were adults?
Actually, they were all over 18.
All over 18?
That's right.
So they were all adults?
Yes.
Okay. So did you inform Dr. Manamela and Hannah Jacobus that your license limited you to receiving children only?
Sorry, just repeat, Councillor.
Did you inform Hannah Jacobus and Dr. Manamela that your license limited you to receiving children and not adults?
No, I didn't.
You didn't, okay. And
why didn't you?
Okay, because they said I'm going to look after patients for adults over 18.
Didn't you say to them, my license says this will be a child residential care facility? Did you tell them that?
So according to me, it should be from over 18.
But look at the license.
Yes.
And that's what council is putting to you. For persons with severe, profound intellectual disability, namely a child residential care facility. Maximum number of persons, 150. Can you see that?
Yes, Justice.
So my question is, why did you say to them, my license is limited to a child care facility?
No, I didn't, Justice. Because as I'm saying, according to me, it was just severe, profound intellectual disability. And I was looking after patients from 18 and upwards.
But why didn't you know this? It was in your license. And Dr. Manamela signed the certificate, your license. Did she ask you to look after adult patients when she issued the license to you?
No, they just say that they will bring in the patients from life.
And you just accepted them. But you're the manager.
I didn't take note on
this is your anchor light, your anchor
yes, because
center. Why didn't you say, no, my license doesn't allow it?
As I'm saying, I didn't do this. I'm sorry, that line was not. According to me, I had to look after patients over 18 and upwards.
You're sorry about what? What about that line that talks about
the child residential?
I beg your pardon?
The child.
What about it?
Okay. As I'm saying, previously I was looking after 18 years and upwards, and that's what I know of. Now I just noted that the license was for child.
Didn't you read your license once it was issued to you?
They brought the licenses and we just filed them. I didn't take note of their child.
But why didn't you take note of the terms of the license? Why not? Why did you just file it?
As I'm saying, to me, I don't know whether they maybe made a mistake on this license. But as far as I know, it should be 18 years and upwards.
Andithi sesivumelene andithi uthi nizosibamba ngithi abantu bakithi ngiyacela please. In a rally you can heckle, not here, because we have to get to the truth, right? So we don't heckle witnesses, please. Just allow the lady to help us get to the truth. You did not read the license, you say?
Yes, as I'm saying, because I was looking after patients that's 18 and upwards, and that is what they actually have to put on the license.
Did they force you to do this? To register Anchor Center? To want to set up at Kalafong Heights and then to move on to Cullinan and thereafter to receive patients? Were you compelled to do it?
Okay, no, they actually, it was only in that meeting that they said, if you want to, you can go and look after that patient.
But you were acting voluntarily. You wanted to do this.
Yes, Justice.
Why did you want to do it?
Because I was already working with these patients.
But to do it, you needed a number of things to be in place, isn't it? You needed a venue.
Yes, Justice.
You needed a license. You needed the knowledge and skill. You needed money.
Yes, Justice.
And you needed to care for the people. Is it not so? Not just to make money, to look after them.
No, it was to care for these patients.
Counsel.
Thank you, Justice Mstanek. We know now that they moved you to Cullinan Center because Kalafong Heights was not suitable for you to occupy. And the premises you occupied at Cullinan, were they catered for 150 patients?
No.
How many?
Okay, it was actually for the one ward was take 25 and 30.
Okay. And you received one ward for 25. And when did you receive this one ward for 25 patients?
The patients,
yes,
on the 23rd of...
On the 23rd?
Yes.
Then on the 23rd...
23rd of which month? Of June 2016.
That's right,
Thank
Councillor.
And the 23rd of June 2016, that is the date on which you received your first patients?
Yes, Councillor.
And it will house 25, and you said you received 30?
Yes, Councillor.
Why was that so?
Okay, as I'm saying, the patients that came in from our CCRC on the 23rd, we told them we can only put 25 in.
Yes.
But that date, when they brought the patients in, they said, this is the patients that was allocated for me. It was 30. And I said, I don't have any space for them. And the previous CEO from Cullinan, Hannah and Mr. Mukhale,
Yes.
I mean Mrs. Jacobs and Mr. Mukhale was there, and they said, I said to her, I can't host this 30 patients, so she went to the CEO, and the CEO actually just come and say, we must just deal with it.
What does just deal with it mean?
For the 30 patients that they...
You must take the 30 patients.
Yes, so we had to get some extra 5 beds and to fit it in for them.
Within the same ward?
Yes.
That could house only 25 beds?
25.
Okay. Well, then the next ward, when did you receive it?
Was the 29th
29th of
June.
Of June.
Where did the extra people sleep?
We got beds for them because we had extra beds, but we didn't, it wasn't in the cubicles.
And in relation to this license, who delivered it to you?
It was Rochelle Gordon.
And Dr. Manamela was aware that you received this license?
Yes, counselor.
And I'll take it that she was aware to the limitations on this license?
Yes, counselor.
Okay. Yes. Then the next ward, you receive it, and when do you receive the next batch of patients? You had said that you received around 70.
Okay, what happened, the other ward was occupied by the other NGO, Siabadenga.
Siabadenga.
Yes.
Yes.
And Dr. Malamela and Hannah came one day and they said to Siabadenga, she must occupy 2 wards and I must occupy 2 wards. So she must make space that I can use the other wards.
How many patients were supposed to be housed in the second ward?
Okay, there was also, no, on the other side was 30.
30 as well?
Yes.
And I guess that you received more than 30?
Yes.
By virtue of the number of patients you had referred to earlier on?
Yes, Councillor.
How many were those?
Those patients was 40 when they came in.
And I take it that you were forced to look for further beds to be placed in that ward, that is the second ward?
Yeah.
Did you?
Councillor. Yes, Councillor.
And this is a ward that normally took how many people?
Okay, the one ward 25 and the one 30.
So the 31 had 40 people.
Yes.
The one for 25 had 30 people.
That's right, Justice.
And just to emphasize, this was throughout with the arrangement and consent of Dr. Manamela.
Yes, Councillor.
Okay. And let me take you to one of the loose bundle of annexures, that is Annexure 50, that is ELA 50. Are you there?
Yes, Councillor.
What is that document? I see there's a list of names there from 1 to 30.
Yes, this is the patients that I received from CCRC.
This will be the patients you received on the 23rd of June.
Yes, Councillor.
Okay. And the next page?
Is the patients that we discharged to Ethel Nube from Precious Angels.
When did you discharge these patients?
Okay, according to the list, there's different dates on that we discharged them. But on the 29th, she took the first patients when they came in from life.
Let's take it step by step. On the second page, at the top, there's a column there. It says name, surname, institution, date admit, date transfer, information handed over to. Where do I find the date of, that is the date on which you you transferred them to Precious
Okay,
Angels?
there is a date there that shows date transferred.
Date transfer.
Yes.
Those are the dates. So, for example, you received...
That's the Life Esidimeni arbitration process. We're breaking away there. Briefly, we're going to go to Kenya, where the Electoral Commission is due to announce the winner of the last week's presidential election rerun. That will happen later today. Now, ahead of the announcement, SABC's foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, is currently interviewing Kenya's Deputy President, William Ruto. Let's go. They're live.
Those who will demonstrate, there are those who will do. That's what happens in a democracy. What we are waiting for is a declaration at the National Tallying Center. Prepare for the swearing in. If there will be challenges, legal challenges, they will go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will discharge its mandate, as is expected of that body by the Constitution and the people of Kenya. And we will take up things from there.
The former Prime Minister Raila Odinga told SABC yesterday that he would like to see a situation where there is a rerun in 90 days. What's your view?
I think Mr. Odinga is fatigued or a bit maybe confused. Yes, there will be an election. It will not be a repeat election, and it will not be in 90 days. There will be an election, I think, in 1,744 days on the 9th of August, 2022. That is the election that will be there. This other election that is talking about, I think is maybe somebody confused him, or it's just a figment of his imagination.
The issue of unity and to rebuild the country, how are you going to ensure that after this election, should the Supreme Court indeed confirm the results or agree that the new administration can start work, how are you going to rebuild the divided Kenya?
First, it is not true that Kenya is divided. Kenya has a divided political opinion. And that is what a democracy is all about. Every country votes this way or that way. In fact, if you look at the US elections, President Trump, who is president today, lost the popular vote. But he is president of the US, right? And the half of more people actually did not vote for President Trump than those who voted for him. But he is president and he is serving the people of America. In Kenya, it is not a choice the president, myself, or any official in government makes to serve every Kenyan equally. It is mandatory. It is a constitutional imperative that government that is elected, it is not elected for those who voted for it. The government of Kenya, once elected, is a government for those who voted for it and those who did not vote for it. That is what the Constitution anticipates. And more importantly, constitutional provisions and mandate safeguards and ensures that in public appointments, in public discourse, every section of Kenya, every interest in Kenya is catered for. And therefore, our Constitution ensures that no part of Kenya is left behind, no section of our Kenyan society is excluded. The Constitution, by provision of its articles, ensures that Kenya moves together. So after this election, Kenya will come together. The government of Kenya will serve all Kenyans equally. And for your information, we now have a devolved system of government that ensures that resources, power, decision-making, choice of priorities, choice of policies is devolved. Every section of Kenya will, the Constitution ensures that they become part of the whole by Constitution. So there is no chance for anybody, for any government, to marginalize any part of Kenya, any community in Kenya, any section of Kenya, any class of Kenyans. Every part of Kenya will be included in government going forward, not by choice, but by dictate of the Constitution.
The continent is struggling to deal with the issue of tribalism and ethnicity. As the incoming administration, what are you going to do to bridge the gap in terms of different groupings to ensure that each and every group or ethnic group or tribe feels that I am a Kenyan, I can be part of government, I can contribute my skills at any level of government or anyway. Inclusivity, how are you going to ensure inclusivity?
4 years, 4.5 years when we took over government, the country was
well, we lost the link there. We'll see if we can get that back. Meantime, of course, it's happening here at Esidimeni. We'll see if we can get that interview with Sophie Mukwena and, of course, William Ruto, the Deputy President in Kenya, to give us his take on it. And as you heard also earlier, that they're waiting for the next election, 2022. But we'll keep you briefed on that. Let's now go back live to Live Esidimeni.
Okay, that was the instruction from the DDG.
Dr. Manamela, who's the DDG?
I don't know. It was a man. I can't remember what was his name. But Dr. Malamela and them was also there. But he said.
Dr. Malamela was also there?
Yes.
And you were told the DDG gave these instructions. You bring people. When you originally told you receive people from Life Esidimeni, and now you're receiving people from CRC, did that surprise you?
Yes, Justice, but I don't know why I received it from CCRC.
And you have people for 2 weeks, and then they are bundled out of there. Then they must go to Atteridgeville from Cullinan. Did they tell you why these people deserved that treatment?
As I'm saying, it was just the instruction from the department.
And did you think that's a correct way to deal with mentally ill patients?
Okay, they didn't give us any option then, because the health department must actually make sure that they are placed with another NGO.
Did you think that was a correct way to deal with mentally ill patients?
No, Justice.
You did not think it was correct?
No, but you couldn't say anything.
Why not?
Because it was instruction from a higher, from the DGD.
But you didn't work for them. Why did you have to take instructions from the DDG? Was it because if you had to refuse, they wouldn't pay you?
Not actually, but just because it's from the health department, they actually know better than us. That's what I thought.
You thought it wasn't right to do it, but you did it nonetheless. So the natural question is, why did you do it?
Just because it was an instruction from health department.
You knew it was wrong, but because it was an instruction, you did it.
Yes.
Why? Why would you do something knowingly wrong? You don't work for the department. For instance, take men and women and put them into the same ward. Why would you do that? What were you afraid of?
I was not actually afraid, but they just gave us instructions, and it was actually because he said it, and he said Hannah and Mr. Michale must make sure they take that ladies out of that wards.
Council.
Thank you. In line with what Justice Msanek had asked you about, a series of questions, is it correct that you did not have a formal lease agreement with Cullinan?
Sorry, Councillor?
Did you have a formal lease agreement with Cullinan?
No, I didn't.
And how much were you paying for your occupation of the premises there?
At that time, I didn't pay anything yet. Because
You didn't pay anything?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So you basically were at the mercy of these officials?
Yes, Councillor.
Okay.
What mercy? Why were you at their mercy? If you didn't do what they wanted, you wouldn't have received 539,000 rand, isn't it?
Just as I can say, it was really not about the money, but I did it because they asked me to do it, and I was really having that passion.
Why did you agree to do what they asked you to do?
Because
we're trying to understand what happened here.
Yes.
I'm sure Council is going to take you the number of people who died under your care. You know that. We're going to get there just now.
Yes.
And all the advocates are going to be asking you. After all this and the nice money, many people died under your care in a very short space of time. So why did you do this? Why did you do something that endangered the lives of these vulnerable patients? You say it's
If
not
I
about
may
money.
say, I don't know
What is it
what.
about?
If I may say, I don't know what did they decide in health department, but we.
No, I want to know what you decided. I want to know why you did it, and why you assumed to look after people over whom you had no skill to look after. Why did you do that?
Okay, I was looking after these patients because I really cared for them.
You really cared for them?
Yes, Justice.
That's why you squeezed 30 people into a ward of 25 and mixed men and women into this crowded circumstances. Where did they wash?
Dr. Malamela and Franz and Hannah, all the people from health department actually help us actually through this.
Instructed you to do this?
That's right.
But didn't you think and feel for them? How do you crowd men and women into one space, having been moved from some institution, and you just carry on? At least for what, 5-6 months? Is that how you cared for them?
I really cared for them, Justice, because the patients that was there with me, I really make them really comfortable.
Counsel.
Thank you, Justice. And whilst we are still on LR 50, this document, and this, it's 1, 2, 3, the fourth page. Could you explain what is that document? This one.
This is the patient that was in our care.
Yes. Is this a full list or what does it represent?
Yes, Council.
It's how many for the record? Can you say that into the record?
Yes. 72.
72. Between these two wards?
Yes, but the first, on the 29th, directly there was patients transferred to Pumi. They didn't even come in on my premises.
Yes. So this includes the patients which you were directed to transfer to?
Yes, Councillor.
Precious Angels?
Yes.
Okay.
And why do you call your center a center for intellectual disabled? Or let's phrase it the other way.
The mental.
Were all the people who were under your care people who were, to use your words, intellectually disabled?
No, Justice.
No.
No.
You took whatever came there.
Yes, they just...
Whatever their disabilities were, you took them on.
They brought them to me.
Why did you do that again?
They brought them into me.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, that's the patients that they brought in from life.
Yeah, but you claim to be a center for intellectually disabled people, and why do you take just about any person who's brought to you?
Okay, as I wanted to say this, when they brought the patients in, I asked them that there's patient that is not intellectual, and there's patients that it's not, has to be in a hospital. So according to them, they will sort it out afterwards.
So you just listened to them, bringing people who don't fall within the category that you claim you want to look after?
Yeah, and then they said they will come and take the patients which is not suitable after everybody was just settled in.
And why do you go along with all this, endanger the lives of these patients? And if it's not for money, why? For what reason?
Thank you, Justice. Justice Mseneka, I'm advised that it's 11:30.
Yes. We will adjourn now until 12 midday.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth. Tops its bar. Good beer, good advice, no Ponzi beer stuff.
Phones, cloud systems, and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamati. Time for a little bit of sports as we welcome this Monday morning, and it almost is November. Now, South Africa have won both the men's and women's titles at the Africa Cup of Nations hockey tournament in Egypt on Sunday. The men beat the hosts 2-1 in the final, while the women recorded a 4-0 victory over Ghana. Meanwhile, Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton won his 4th Formula One world title despite finishing 9th at the Mexican Grand Prix.
After a first-lap collision with Ferrari rival Sebastian Vettel, Hamilton fought back from last place to 9th. Vettel started on pole, but dropped back to 19th after having to pit at the end of the first lap. He eventually finished 4th. The race was won by Red Bull's Max Verstappen, his 2nd victory of the season and 3rd of his career. With 2 races left, Hamilton now has an unassailable 56-point lead over Vettel. His 4th world title makes him Britain's most successful Formula One driver ever.
Honestly, it doesn't feel real, man. I mean, obviously, that's not the kind of race that I want when you're 40 seconds behind or something. But, you know, I never gave up, and that's really, I guess, what's important, what's in my heart. I kept going right to the end.
Denmark's Caroline Wozniacki bagged the biggest title of her career at the weekend. She beat American Venus Williams 6-4, 6-4 in the final of the WTA finals in Singapore. It was Wozniacki's first win ever over Williams and will ensure that she finishes the year at number 3 on the world ranking. Romania's Simona Halep will end 2017 as number 1. Meanwhile, Roger Federer of Switzerland beat Argentine Juan Martín del Potro in the Swiss indoors final in Basel. His record 8th Basel crown and 7th title of the year. If Del Potro had won, he would have secured the final qualifying place for next month's ATP finals in London. And in golf, American Ryan Armour won his first PGA Tour title in 105 starts. Armour claimed victory at the Sanderson Farms Championship in Jackson, Mississippi. He finished on 19 under par for the tournament after a final round of 4 under 68. He was 5 shots clear of his compatriot Chesson Hadley, who finished 2nd after also shooting 68 on the last day. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
Now to cricket, we're bringing it back home, where the Proteas swept aside Bangladesh in the 2nd T20 International by 83 runs to secure a tour whitewash over the visitors. The victory was the 7th across the 3 formats. South African middle order batsman David Miller ensured a big result for the hosts when he smashed 9 sixes and 7 fours to reach 100 runs in 35 balls for the quickest international T20 century.
Top edge, and he'll go to 50 rather fortuitously, but he'll take it. Oh, he's gone for the big one, and it's going to clear the ground by quite a distance again. Oh, magnificent. That is a glorious stroke. Short, he pulls it. This is the 5th one. It's high up in the air. It clears the leg side boundary. The 5th 6 of the over. There's 1 ball that remains in the 19th. Strikes this through the covers. They'll be able to turn for the 2nd. This will be the fastest 100 in world cricket. David Miller coasts his 2nd run, removes his helmet. An unbelievable celebration. It's Miller time. So 224 for 4 at a run rate of 11.20.
That was the 7-0 tour whitewash that the Proteas inflicted over the hapless Bangladeshi. Now on to football news, where Mamelodi Sundowns' troubles continued after they went down 1-0 to Chippa United in a 2017 Telkom knockout match in East London over the weekend. In another last 16 encounter, Baroka FC beat the struggling Cape Town City with the same scoreline in Polokwane.
Top of the Absa Premiership club, Baroka FC wanted to continue with their good vein of form against Cape Town City, who have hit a slump lately. Baroka showed their intentions to win early in the match, but the visitors managed to clear the danger of the goal line. But there was nothing to deny talent Chawapiwa minutes later to give the home side the lead. Cape Town City did not do enough to get a goal in the opening half. The visitors started playing with more purpose early in the second half in search of an equalizer. Baroka forward Gift Mutupa should have wrapped things up midway through the second half with the opposition keeper at his mercy. City managed to score, but the goal was disallowed after the referee Victor Gomes spotted a handball inside the box and Baroka marched forward, winning the match 1-0. Downs were looking for a positive result to keep their cup hopes alive after they were knocked out of the CAF Champions League and also not having any success in the MTN 8. They had the clearest scoring chance early on with Hlompo Kekana setting up Thokozani Sikotlong from his own half, but keeper Daniel Akpei produced a good save. The home side launched an attack minutes later at the other end with Abel Mabaso whipping a cross into the box, and Dennis Onyango was on hand to deny Paseka Mako. Former Sundown striker Samuel Julis broke the hearts of the Brazilian fans with an easy tap-in midway through the second half. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, of course, the draw was held straight afterwards yesterday, but here's a quick reminder of what the results for the weekend do look like. Starting on Friday, Maritzburg United and Platinum Stars. As you can see there, all the 0-0s and the 0, too many of those. We had Saturday with a 1-0 where Orlando Pirates are now through to the next round. Polokwane City and Ajax Cape Town as well. And Bloem Celtic 2-2, 5-4 Celtic winning on penalties there. Then, of course, Kaizer Chiefs, they beat AmaZulu 3-0. In Durban, Chiefs choose to take that match. And Bidvest a 4-2 win over Free State Stars. And then Chipa United yesterday, as you just heard, 1-0 against Sundowns, which means Sundowns can really just focus on the league now, since they have almost been released from almost all of their other obligations. Baroka FC 1-0 against Cape Town City, continuing Benny McCarthy's woes. It's now 4 matches in a row that Benny McCarthy, the debutant coach in the PSL, has not won. And with that said, of course, we have a look at what's happening now, because the bitter rivals, Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, managed to avoid playing each other in the quarterfinals. The draw, as I said earlier, was conducted after matches were played yesterday. Now, Pirates will host Polokwane City in the last 8, with Kaizer Chiefs to visit Chipa United in another match. Bloem Celtic travel to Bokeng to play Platinum Stars, with their upset Premiership defending champions Bidvest hosting Baroka FC in Johannesburg. Now, a little further afield, Manchester City remain 5 points clear with a positive 29-goal difference at the top of the English Premier League, as they razzled and dazzled West Brom Albion at the Hawthorns, running out 3-2 winners. And Leicester City, they crushed Everton 2-0 at home. Now, here's a look at the highlights of these selected matches.
And leading away from Gay. And feeding it in here for Morris. There's Varney! And in towards Varney, sliced in horribly by poor Jonjo Kenny. That's a nasty, nasty moment for the young fullback. It doesn't get a whole lot worse than that. Lukaku, Martial, onside, scores, Stretford. There's your late goal, your late, possibly telling goal.
Here's Sané. Neilman just afforded him a yard of space. That was all he needed. So simple. Having said that, it only takes a moment to get back into it. Jay Rodriguez. Fernandinho letting fly, and it's in. Sané, good 1-2 with De Bruyne. The Belgian gets the return ball again. David Silva, Walker in space. They've worked the space very cleverly. Oh, it's a wonderful ball in. Raheem Sterling couldn't miss. And Manchester City extend their lead to 3-1 after their best move of the game. Working the space quite brilliantly. And Raheem Sterling makes it 7 in 8 Premier League games this season.
The final score really was 3-2 at the end. Otamendi made a mistake and West Brom managed to get one back, but 3-2 was the final score line there. We bring it home now, where Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee has included 4 uncapped players in a squad of 34 for the end-of-year tour to Europe. Now, the Boks will round off their season with test matches against Ireland, France, Italy and Wales, and all of this starting next month. The squad is fairly straightforward, although there's a question mark over the inclusion of Sharks loose forward Jean-Luc du Preez. He injured his ankle in Saturday's Currie Cup final, and his inclusion will be subject to a scan and orthopedic opinion. Dan du Preez, Louis Schroeder and centre Lucanio Am are the uncapped players from the Sharks. And all this as Warwick Gelant from the Bulls has been given the nod for some impressive performances from fullback this season. Players returning include Sharks loosehead Tendam Tawarira and Uzair Kasim, Opa Mohoje and Francois Venter from the Cheetahs. Ibn Etzebeth retains the captaincy, while Warren Whiteley, Jaco Kriel and Jan Serfontein, amongst others, were not included because of injury or other reasons. Okay, now that's where we leave it with the sports. It seems as if civil rights organization AfriForum is speaking, and they say protesters and supporters of Black Monday are calling for the development and implementation of a consolidated strategy against farm attacks. Now, in Cape Town, there was traffic disruptions on the highway and near the R300, where other groups were driving to Voortrekker Road. Now, the action follows, and you know what? We seem to have a thing where I do believe that Elvis is standing by to share some of this information with you. Elvis?
Thank you, Kendall. And of course, we're going live now to Vanessa. We're going live. Well, thank you, Kendall. We're going live now to Vanessa Puna, who is standing by in Cape Town to give us an update on the march there by the farmers in Cape Town. Vanessa, very good morning once again. Can you give us an update as to what's happening there now?
Yes, I can give you an update, Alvis. We are currently in the parking lot in front of the Greenpoint track, where quite a number of people have already gathered, some that have made their way ahead of the motorcade all along Voortrekker Road through areas like Goodwood, Maitland, etc. So quite a number of people already joining us here in the parking lot just in front of the track. Now, we know of some disruptions earlier on as a small splinter group made their way onto the N1 highway coming into town. The majority of the motorcade, if it were, and I'm talking about thousands of vehicles, however, stuck to the routes as allocated by the city of Cape Town. So quite a number of people. I counted in excess of 1,000. I've seen on a city of Cape Town a WhatsApp group, someone saying as many as 10,000 people participating in this Black Monday protest action against a killing of farmers and also against violence against the farming community. So if I can just show you this parking lot, we've had officials tell us that in the next few minutes or so it will be full to capacity. Most of those bakkies and cars, we've seen trucks and tractors. It was of course kick-started at Klapmuts along the R44 by horse and carriage as well as horses, Alvis. That procession started off just after 8 o'clock this morning, taking quite a few hours to get here to Greenpoint. We're talking about massive numbers in terms of vehicles along those routes as specified, as well as large numbers of people coming from across farming communities, farmers, farm workers, associates in the farming industry, most wearing black T-shirts saying "Genoeg is genoeg," which of course is the motto of this protest, meaning enough is enough in terms of the killings of farmers and the violence on farms. Quite a number of people I can see from where I stand holding up white styrofoam crosses, also in remembrance of those, according to AfriForum, over 70, I think it's 71 right now, farmers that have been killed in South Africa this year alone, and also over 300 or so attacks on farms this year. So the gathering, people coming together here now, we're expecting the bulk of that motorcade to reach us in the next half an hour or so, Elvis.
Update. It seems like it's happening there in Cape Town. Of course, that march looking at the farm killings that we have over the last year, you heard 71 people died thus far from the beginning of the year up until now. But we conducted a poll today, and we wanted to check with you the following. Let's take a look at the poll. And where is the poll? Where's the poll? Before we get to the comments, well, there you go. Some of the comments coming through for the march. I'll wear black for my fellow black farm workers who die as a result of them being mistaken for baboons or used for target shooting practice. We ask you about that poll. This one's from Michael, says, it will highlight the farm killings epidemic, but why do all these marches happen every time as it has to do with the white people's interest? Let's just take a look at that poll again in relation to what people will do with their children. And it seems like we haven't got the poll. I don't know why, but we had a poll, of course, looking at what you make of the new ruling. So you can't smack your children anymore. You can't discipline them anymore with violence, they say. Well, that's where we got to leave. From myself, Elvis Preston, and the team, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow, same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.